Okay, so as we are still welcoming everyone in, we're just going to get started and please feel free to join in to the conversation at any point. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Layah Hodges. I am an AmeriCorps Vista from the Food Literacy Project, and today I will be co-moderating our panel today with Andrew Kang Bartlett from the Food and Neighborhoods Community Coalition. Today's Learning Lab will be an informative, community-based discussion of local leaders and their initiatives who are building a more equitable, local food system and contributing to a model of shared local prosperity. Next Wednesday, we will gather virtually for the Food Justice Reckoning Forum to make the case for a percentage of the American Rescue Plan coming to Louisville to be allocated towards serving the community and improving our local food system. Andrew, would you like to share an overview of our food system?
I would love to, yeah. And just a quick note, we've decided to postpone the Reckoning Forum until August 11th, given the pace and timeline on the American Rescue Plan funds. So we can send more information on that as we get that ready for you. So yeah, let me, thought it'd be good just to kind of give an overview, since even the term food system, may not be a typical term for everybody. So let me pull up, see if I can work this technology. I can't. All right. Have no idea what I just did. Give me a second here. All right. I'll stop sharing for a sec. Had to do the obligatory technical meltdown just for kicks. There we go. Now it's going to work. All right. There we go. We're getting there. So the food system, let's start from the beginning and make it a larger picture, and we can even advance. All right. So we're going to illustrate what a food system is and use a tree as a metaphor. Of course, a tree needs roots to provide the foundation and the support, the fuel for a food system. So key to that is planning, collaboration from many stakeholders with authentic community participation. Other key nutrients are good policies and incentives to encourage growth. And other nutrients that are key are money and infrastructure to build the food web. And perhaps most important is affordable land and long-term access or ownership. So these are the nutrients of a healthy tree and a healthy food system. As important is how you approach it, because that's really the key to ensuring that it is both equitable and is built with resilience. So I'm just using this word lamb to illustrate some key factors in the how to do it. Listen, L for listen. Listen to directly affected people and community stakeholders. A, accompany, stand together and support each other and build power. M, for men, prioritize low income and BIPOC groups and businesses. And B, build relationships and transformative alternatives. And if we do all these things, we can grow a healthy tree, a healthy food system, and the fruits that come But as we know that little support is being given currently to this more local, equitable, resilient food system from traditional power brokers, from philanthropy, et cetera. So to build a strong local food system, we must work in solidarity with each other and build people power. Because if you give someone a fish they eat for a day, if you teach someone to fish, they can feed themselves until the water gets contaminated, or the shoreline is seized. But if you support a social movement, then whatever the challenge, they can organize with their peers to reach their goals. And the goal we're talking about is an equitable and resilient local food economy. And we can think of this as a community food web. And here are some pieces to that food web, the elements of a community food web, and a shout out for the most important group, the farmers, the food producers that make it all possible, along with the farm workers on that food production side. Then you've got distribution and aggregation, you've got food processing, marketing, the markets where it's sold, restaurants, preparation, consumption, all important eaters, and then food recovery, what you do with the surplus or the waste, so-called waste. And all of this, it's key to make sure that those workers in the food chain are compensated well and treated well. So it can be a place where good jobs are created and wealth creation can happen in communities and for individuals and families, whether they be farmers and farm workers, shippers along the food chain, food processors, craftspeople, artisans, storage, people who work in that side of things, the people who cook it and get it to us, and with that goal of creating and making accessible, affordable, healthy food for everyone. And done so with love. And then we rescue the surplus and put the extras back into to become nutrients for the soil to create more food. So that's kind of a picture of a tree of a community food web, a local food system. And with that, we'll get to hear from some practitioners in different parts of that food web. And I'll pass it back to Layah.
Thank you so much for that overview, Andrew. Now, before we begin talking with our panelists, there are a few housekeeping items that we would like to address. If you have any questions for our speakers, please hold on to them until our 1 o'clock question and answering / our networking session, or you may type them in the chat so you won't forget, and Andrew and I will return to them if we have time before our Q&A session. Additionally, if you would like to keep in contact and stay updated on the work of our respective organizations, please type your email in the chat box and we will ensure we reach back out to you. Thank you all for joining us today as we learn more about Louisville's food system, especially our urban food production and the important ingredients that support that work: land, water, infrastructure, and supportive policies. We'll give more background on each of our speakers momentarily, but first, let's do a quick go around to hear what they're up to in our food system. Vaughn, would you like to start us off? You can share your name and maybe 1 to 2 sentences describing your main involvement related to food agriculture in Louisville.
What's up, everybody? I'm Vaughn from Kentuckiana Backyard Farms. What a lot of people know me in the city for is chicken, rabbits, and goats. And right now, what I'm doing to serve community, I think would be selling eggs to everybody that has either met me on Instagram, Facebook, Nextdoor, or in the farmer's market at 18th and Magazine. I'm gonna pass it to LeTicia.
What's up, Vaughn? Hey, everybody. How you doing? My name is LeTicia Marshall. I'm the owner of BearFruit and Grow LLC. And so what we do is coach people on how to grow their own food. And so I want, like every other house, if not every house on my block, growing food in their front or backyard or both. And throughout Southwest Louisville, I'm a huge advocate for Southwest Louisville, getting fresh produce and just empowering the people to take over the food system themselves and grow food and help each other. So yeah, I just recently did a few garden giveaways where we were able to some people donated some money, so I was able to get plants in their hands that I grew in my own nursery, some soil, some grow bags, because a lot of the folks did not have, they lived in multifamily housing, so they didn't have big backyards or anything like that. And so they were able to put these grow bags on their front porch or their deck, or a little plot in front of their front door, and grow some food. So yeah, that's what we do. And I'm gonna pass it to Miss Bethany.
Hi, welcome. Thanks so much for having me here. My name is Bethany. I am the agent for horticulture education with University of Kentucky Cooperative Extension here in Louisville. That's the public education arm of UK's College of Agriculture. And I work here in Louisville to support community-based agriculture and food systems. So if you are involved in a community garden, you've probably seen me at your garden in some capacity. I also help facilitate the Louisville Urban Agriculture Coalition. That's a part of Food and Neighborhoods that focuses specifically on our urban ag infrastructure. So our goal with that is to create a more just, equitable, and resilient food system through collaboration, networking, support on a lot of different levels, and we'll talk about that. If you want to get involved, please let me know. Many of the folks on this panel are involved, and I'm sure many folks listening today are too, but if you're not, you should be, because we're awesome. And we'll talk more about it later. And I'm gonna pass it to Pascaline.
Go ahead and unmute yourself, Pascaline. There we go.
Good afternoon. My name is Pascaline. I am one of the leaders at Eden Garden Community since we started to make our crops there. It's gonna be 5 years. I am also a leader of an association called Twiyunge, which means let's work together. It is at the beginning. I'm very interested in the garden, as I used to do that in my country. Of course, we still have a lot of things to learn, but with the experience we got at the community Eden Garden, I feel that we are satisfied. We feel that we are able to continue to work if we find another land. And I'm happy to be here. I see some new people for me, and I try to keep the name. And I think whenever I need one of you, I will try to contact you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all so much for introducing yourselves. Now we're going to start off our panel with Bethany Pratt.
Should I introduce myself?
Yeah, I was going to say, let's make sure Abby goes.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Abby. Yes, please.
Okay. Yeah, my name is Abbey Rudolph. I'm a PhD student in U of L's Urban and Public Affairs Department, I've also been working as the community garden coordinator at Americana Community Center for going on 6 years. And as part of that work, I have been one of the organizational kind of supports of Peaceful Eden, where Pascaline is a garden leader. So been very lucky to work alongside her. And I'm also a member of the Food and Neighborhoods Community Coalition. That's it.
Yes, I am so sorry again, Abby, for cutting you off and forgetting about you. So now we can get into our questions for the panel. To reiterate, Bethany is an agent for horticulture education with the University of Kentucky Cooperative Extension, and she supports community-based agriculture and food systems work throughout Louisville. Bethany is one of the organizers of the Louisville Urban Agriculture Coalition, which is a part of Food and Neighborhoods. The Urban Ag Coalition works to create an equitable and resilient food system here in Louisville. So Bethany, since you do work all over the community, supporting gardens and urban food producers, how does the urban agriculture in Louisville compare to other cities with lots of urban food production?
Wow, jumping right in with some good questions. I think the great thing about Louisville, but also the challenging thing about Louisville is urban agriculture is maybe on the fringes a little bit and in a cultural sense in terms of broad-based support. Obviously folks in this group and on this panel and in this room are maybe a little self-selecting, right? Because I have a feeling most folks here are either avid gardeners and growers of food or animals, right, as a part of their agricultural experience. But, right, when we look at Louisville as a whole in terms of kind of codes, regulations, laws, we're not currently experiencing a lot of support from that standpoint, especially when we start to compare ourselves to other cities across the country. In terms of that interface between local government and community-based initiatives, right? So the beautiful thing about Louisville is kind of in the dearth of governmental oversight. We have a beautiful organic community here of folks doing things and getting things done, you know, but could it be better if there was other support? Yeah, and I think there's definitely models out there especially when we start to look at bigger cities, Chicago, Los Angeles, New York, even some of, you know, smaller cities, Washington, D.C., Richmond, Virginia, Asheville, North Carolina, are all places where that intermixing of kind of the grassroots activism that we have, right, with Food and Neighborhoods and the Urban Ag Coalition is really bolstered by great local government support. So that would I say is kind of like where we're sitting currently for ourselves.
And with that, I do have a follow-up question for you. What do you think Louisville could do to strengthen agriculture in the city?
Yeah, so on that point, I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of more of the structure pieces first. And the first is thinking about policy and support. And Abby is by far the expert on this, and she's going to really give us some nitty-gritty detail, I'm sure. But some things that the Urban Ag Coalition has been working on, first and foremost, is our land development codes. So land development codes are broadly this set of rules that tell us what we can and can't do with our property in our specific area. So in this case, it's like Louisville, Jefferson County. So that it regulates a lot of different things from, can I build a house here? Can I build a park or a factory? Could I have an apartment? Even down to questions of, could I have a pony in my yard? If so, how much yard do I need, right? A community garden, a grocery store. All of those things are wrapped up in the Land Development Code. And again, that is a very broad answer to that, you know. And fortunately for us, the Urban Ag Coalition and a lot of other community folks participated in an ongoing land development code review for equity and have made some pretty solid changes to that code, which has really expanded access to agriculture specifically within Louisville. So doing things like permitting agriculture in all zoning districts, being one of the most important things. So basically that says if you find a piece of property and you would like to garden or grow something on it, there's no reason you cannot, provided that the land is suitable in terms of like soil quality, right? So there's not any other reason that you could do that. So that's a huge win for us because previously it was restricted. We've also seen some changes in terms of what is allowable in terms of structures to support agriculture. So many folks, particularly if you live in West Louisville, you've probably seen hoop houses or high tunnels going up. They look a lot like greenhouses, but they don't need power associated to them. So it's a passive solar growing situation. And so now those are allowed and permitted agricultural structures. So you can have one on your property and grow in it. And that's a really exciting development. Before it was kind of a build it and it's cool as long as your neighbors don't complain situation. As with a lot of other associated agricultural infrastructure. So we see folks using raised bed gardens, building trellises, putting up small signs to advertise their business or their community site. So now all of those things are allowed kind of by right through the Land Development Code. And then we also worked on changing some things related to our backyard animals, particularly backyard animal processing. So it's really exciting. So we have some of that kind of policy level change happening right now. Our next big task is thinking about the property maintenance codes. So property maintenance codes are those, I see a lot of folks shaking their heads because they kind of know, but property maintenance codes are essentially like, okay, you know, yes, you can do that, but it needs to look or appear a certain way. And some of those things, right, involve just that white culture acceptance of what is acceptable and normal and looks nice. Some of that is safety in terms of structure and building and all of those kinds of things. So that's our next kind of step, is thinking from that big picture perspective, is how do we adjust and work with the city to adjust property maintenance codes to align with these new land development codes that are more open and agreeable to urban agriculture. So there's the policy platform, and then I'm just gonna hop through a couple other things too as well. From a small farmer standpoint, some awesome things that we could think about here in Louisville is aggregation and distribution. If you're a small scale grower, so Vaughn and LeTicia would definitely fall into this category. They're producing a lot of stuff, probably not quite enough to go sell to a Kroger or someplace like that, but they probably have extra beyond what their customers are buying in any one week. So an aggregation center would be like taking produce or other ag products like eggs or veggies that's that extra, putting it together and making it a big enough volume that a Kroger or a larger scale like restaurant could purchase it. And it's a space, right, that provides kind of community-based purchasing to support small agricultural businesses. It also helps some of those other kind of local goals of eating more local food, decreasing our carbon footprint, all of those wonderful environmental benefits, and really kind of connecting our food chain across the city. We also need to think about folks here in Louisville who are on limited resources, who need to eat fresh and healthy food just like everyone else, but may not have the financial capacity to do that. We have programs here in Louisville and in the state of Kentucky, the Double Dollars program, which provides folks who receive SNAP benefits to double their money at farmers market and other local food retailers. Louisville contains 20% of the entire state of Kentucky's population. And currently the Double Dollars allocated to our city for SNAP recipients, senior vouchers, and WICs don't begin to meet the need of the actual population that is receiving those things here in Louisville. So that's more of a state level policy that we could think about here as well. Right, and that does two things, right? It gets more folks eating fresh local food. It also puts money into the hands of local farmers. And then on that kind of final note of supporting folks with limited resources to access local food, is increasing our network of food donation sites that can accept fresh produce. Fresh produce has a shorter shelf life, right? Because it needs to be refrigerated and all of that. And so having infrastructure at more food donation sites like refrigerators or freezers, depending on the product, is also a great way to increase local food consumption and food access to folks, as well as, again, providing another outlet for folks who maybe grew a little extra or have extra to support their community through all of this. So that was a lot. And join the Urban Ag Coalition. We'll talk about and work in food and neighborhoods, because we think and talk about these things a lot and are working on them.
Thank you so much, Bethany, for sharing. Now we are going to move on to LeTicia Marshall. She founded BearFruit and Grow in 2018 and runs an urban farm, a YouTube gardening channel, and offers garden coaching services. She has a master's degree in social work from the University of Louisville, and she currently spends her time as a full-time mother of 2 and a farmer. Now, LeTicia, you are an urban gardener producing vegetables at your home in Shively, and you also grew thousands of seedlings for the Urban Ag Coalition seedling giveaway this spring, which you partnered with the Food Literacy Project on. From your perspective, how do you think Louisville could better support you and the urban agriculture across the city?
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for having me, and I'm so excited about this conversation. For one, there's a lot of people on here that I do not know, and so I appreciate the opportunity to meet you all and create this community of people that are excited to talk about food access, and not so much on the surface, because I'm not a surface person. I'm kind of direct, so I would ask your forgiveness, but I mean it. Everything that comes out of my mouth, I mean it. Okay, so it is an issue, and it's bigger than supporting my business, right? I'm excited to be able to help people grow food and coach them. Literally, like, the plant is dying. It looks like it's dying. What is happening to it? What is this bug that is on this plant? I don't know what it is. Well, great. I don't know what it is either. Are you scared to take it off, right? Or to how many times should I water a day? Well, my plant died, and I just experienced a death in my family, and I'm really having a hard time that my garden is dying as well. Like, how do I deal with that? Right? It really gets that deep sometimes. So it's not just about growing food. I'm not minimizing that, but it's about meeting people where they are and creating this space where not only can they grow food, but they grow themselves, right? And then maybe influence some other people around them to do the same thing. And it really is like a spiritual journey, if you allow it to be. And so how can this greatly affect Louisville Metro? Well, there are a lot of things going on right now in the city regarding reform. And specifically, Bethany had mentioned the Land Development Code reform that claims it's in the name of racial equity, but I would challenge that, right? I don't feel that way at all. I don't feel like it's addressing racial equity, and we have to look at that. Equity is a word that I'm almost sick of because I think people like to throw it around, but we don't really like to do the work. And so if we truly want to make things equitable, racially equitable, accessible to all people, no matter where they live in this city, how much money they have, or don't have, okay, then we need to do it, and do whatever we can to create pathways, to create pipelines to those areas that don't have the resources. And we talk about the West End a lot because it needs to be talked about. We talk about Southwest Louisville a little bit because it needs to be talked about. Shively is currently in a food desert. We no longer have a grocery store where we can go and access fresh produce. Okay, we have to drive at least 10 minutes down the road to the big Kroger, right? But there's no grocery stores in our city boundaries that allow us to have access to that. So what about the people that are in wheelchairs now, that was trucking it to the store in their little mobile wheelchairs, but no longer can do that because the Kroger is 10 minutes down the road, right? And so they have to wait on a bus. And that trip to and from the grocery store may take 3 hours, right? And so what are we really doing to address an equitable environment for everyone, so they can have eat. We have to eat and drink to survive. And I want to be a part of the solution all the time. I'm just so overwhelmed by the need, and then overwhelmed by the blatant disrespect that we have for the people in our communities by literally closing a grocery store because we feel like it, or because we're scared that something might happen, right? And so we close a whole grocery store where people cannot have access to food. And so I want to be a part of the solution. And the little bit that I can do is great. I'm excited to do that, but I've got to do something. So the city of Louisville can step up and continue to, create policy, listen to people that know what they're talking about. I am a member of the Urban Ag Coalition, and I was a part of some of the policy reform changes. And I loved, Bethany, Abbey, shout out to y'all because y'all worked y'all's butts off, okay? Miss Amanda Fuller is not here. I don't see her, but she was a part of that journey as well. And that's one place to start, right? We have to get some stuff in writing, because we found out that if it's not in writing, they're not even gonna give you the time of day. But then we have to hold them accountable to make sure that they are enforcing the policies, right? So it's a win that we did have some great policy change, but we can't stop here. And so I want to be a part of that process as well. BearFruit and Grow wants to be that entity that truly does what it says it's going to do, right? So I want to empower the people, but we have to empower ourselves, support each other, work together, no matter where we come from, what we look like, okay, to make some things happen. And then I would say, lastly, just share your resources. Quit hoarding resources. Black farmers, people of color that are they're working their butts off to grow this food for y'all, need resources. We need money, okay? I don't need the check to be written to some other company that is going to give it to me, right? Write the check to LeTicia Marshall, right? Quit creating all these hoops and barriers for the farmer to get through, right? Just give us what we need and get out the way, for the lack of better words, right? I have a t-shirt on my website that says, give me 4 acres and a tractor and leave me alone, right? We can do the work. We can support our communities. We know how since the beginning of time. And I'm speaking about Black people because I'm Black and I've been Black all my life, but I'm just saying, I grew up on a farm. My grandparents and great-grandparents have 60 acres in Metcalfe County, Kentucky. And so I watched them bust their butts, right, and provide for their family. But farming is hard work. But their farm is way smaller than the farm next door, right? A white family that has 200 acres. Why is that the case? We know why, right? But that has to stop. That has to stop. So give us resources. We need checks. We need money. We need our fridges, right? Because I have to get up 3 hours before a farmer's market and harvest my stuff because I don't have access to a fridge or cooler to put stuff in so I can harvest a couple of days before farmer's market, right? It's incredible what just a fridge could do to enhance the system that these farmers are trying to create for themselves, so we can get this food to the people. And infrastructure is important. So we need support. I am so grateful for the support that I've experienced from the Urban Ag Coalition and as well from the community. I see some of my volunteers on here now. What's up, Susanna? What's up, Vaughn? What's up, Mariel? Like Aaron, what's going on? Like Andrew. These people are so dope, but it's small group of people that have just said, LeTicia, whatever you need, let me know. And that's so dope, right? And so we just need to continue that. But Louisville Metro, the city of Louisville, it's on its way. There's still a long way to go, but we can come together and really support each other if we just listen and work together. But thank you all so much for allowing me to be on the panel. And thank you, Layla.
Thank you, LeTicia. Now, Vaughn, you work with Kentuckiana Backyard Farms. Could you share a little bit more about that before we get into a couple questions?
Perfect. Kentuckiana Backyard Farms was basically an idea that I had roughly around 2012, 2013, to not, take up too much time. I had a family member that passed away in Jamaica. I went to Jamaica, and the week that I had in Jamaica, the experience that I had with the community out there, how we shared food, how we ate, how my body felt, all of these things went into why I designed or my idea that way, which is relatively like LeTicia's. Everybody in the neighborhood in Jamaica, basically, they all grew their own thing. Everybody had food, but they kind of had their own specific thing, and they traded with each other. And that ability to trade was what made my experience a little more refreshing. And then at the same time, I learned how you may not have a lot of money, but if you have resources and you can do with your resources with other people, you can make something, that seemed impossible possible. So I brought that idea back here, and, the name is exactly what it was about. It's between Indiana and Kentucky, Kentuckiana. Everybody has a backyard. If you have a house, your backyard, and farm it. And that's pretty much how the name and the idea came about.
That's incredible. That's as close to grassroots as it can get. And we're so glad we're seeing you help the community, spreading it through word of mouth and having these direct relationships with your neighbors, and even sharing that around the city. So what do you see for Kentuckiana in the near future? Or what do you hope to be?
Well, just like LeTicia said, I mean, and that's something that I've realized in Louisville, there's a lot of organizations and groups that want to serve the community, but we just have our own name, and under our own name, we're serving the community the way that we see fit. Where mine's is a lot more animal-based and animal stewardship. LeTicia may be growing something where Bethany wants to do, or Bethany's doing the exact same thing within community gardens. We're doing it at our homes, but we're all under the same premise, trying to serve the people by having nourishing food and eliminating food deserts so everybody can eat and eat healthy. Sorry, I don't take up too much time, and I'm not really long-winded. I just try to get to the point.
Thank you. We will definitely love to keep in contact with you and learn more about your efforts and see how you grow.
Right.
Abbey, so you're a second-year PhD student at U of L, and you've been working with foreign-born residents at Americana and in other community gardens, including Peaceful Eden, where Pascaline is also one of the garden leaders. Do you think you could share a picture with us of the urban agricultural scene in which the immigrants and the refugees here in Louisville are involved?
Definitely. So Americana Community Center has an original garden space. It's very small, serves about 12 families, and then also has a children's garden area where youth participants go and learn how to grow food and enjoy fresh food. We also support Peaceful Eden Garden, which is a gardener-led initiative. So as you said, Pascaline is one of the garden leaders there. Common Earth Gardens is the other kind of institutional partner that supports that garden. There's 133 garden plots, and the land belongs to St. John Vianney, which is right next to Americana. And unfortunately, they're ending the MOU with us at the end of this year. And so we are working very hard to find land to relocate those 133 gardeners. And it's really, really difficult. And this is a recurring issue. We have a very long waiting list of international folks who are interested in having space to grow their own food. These are communities in which there is a long history of agricultural knowledge and know-how and skill. They just need space to practice. They don't need us to teach them. I learn from them. And it's incredible to see how much they produce on a 25 by 25 foot square, which I am reminded often is not big enough. So we need more land, not less. So the fact that we're losing this space is devastating and enraging to me personally. I'm very angry that it's going away on behalf of these people because most of the gardeners live in an affordable housing complex that it literally is right next to the garden, so they walk there. There are elderly gardeners who have to walk. They don't have transportation, and so this is a huge deal for this community. But again, we're working really hard to find other land options, and there's a very clear thing that the city can do in order to support this population and other populations and other people and all people who want to grow food, and that is to make sure that there is land accessible to everyone who wants to grow their own food. I think that's a basic human right. There is tons of acres of unused land in this city, so let's put it into production. There's no reason not to, except greed, in my opinion. So, but I'll let Pascaline speak to kind of, some more specifics on Peaceful Eden because she is directly experiencing that process.
Thank you, Abby. So Pascaline, thank you for joining us today. Do you think you could share what Peaceful Eden has meant to you and your family and to your community?
Yeah. First of all, it was very a pleasure for everybody, all of the gardeners to get the plots at Americana Eden Garden, and we made there some kind of vegetable we are not able to get in the store, from the store here. We are making some kind of vegetable we used to get in our country, in Africa. And for some gardeners who has some difficulty of health, they get some food which can help them. And we teach each other how to make them in the garden, because some people who were refugees in some country were not, they had no land, they were unable to make some crops. We teach each other, and we also teach each other how to cook them. Sometimes when we're talking from that garden, we meet each other, we become more friends. We also share some experiences about how making some healthy food, and we share what we get from there. We share with our neighbor, with our friends. Of course, it is not enough. We have a small plot, and what I can say for the moment, they can't, all of the garden, they can't believe that we are ending with our land at Americana. They expect to get another land, another big land than that we have at Americana. We can't figure out how we can live without the garden, because we are already used to eat the vegetable of our choice. Some problem we also have is that as we have small plots, we can sell. Some of the gardener would like to sell to improve our our income. But as we have small plots, we can't do that. Some of us can just sell for 1,500, but we prefer to keep them in our refrigerator for winter period. And of course, we get healthy food because we make them ourselves, and we try to use the compost, sometimes compost without chemicals, and so that we can get organic vegetables. Also, in our country, we like those kind of corn, which grow bigger. So if you go, for example, at Americana now or in July, you will see many corn, and those are very healthy. They like everybody from our country, Burundi, Rwanda, Congo, Tanzania, Uganda, Rwanda. They like those kind of corn. So what we need for the moment is that you can help us to find another land, and we also need to learn because we need to learn how to save, how to keep our food, how to get the marketing, how to sell them. We need to find where to sell our vegetables. We also need to. We can also become farmers if we get a big land. If we, because some of us, we used to do to grow some beef, some goat. We think we are trying to improve ourselves, to improve. Of course, it's not easy when you are new here. We are learning, but we try to improve our production, and we are we were very happy to work with Abbey, with LeTicia, because they help us. Of course, me sometimes I was a little bit embarrassed to talk because of the barrier of language. And some of us, most of the gardener, we have that problem. But we are lucky because when we have a meeting, they try to find a translator who can help us. So, for example, me, I would like to improve my ability to make more vegetables. I would like, in that way, I tried to create an association. We are trying to make some eggplant. We think we can improve. We will grow if we find a land where we can work. We will try to work hard and produce something that we can share with the community. So I think that is what I have to say for the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Pascaline. Now we're getting close to ending our first part of our session, but I think we'd like to ask about one or two more questions. And since land has been such a critical factor and it can be difficult to gather it on such a larger scale, I would kind of like to focus on our individual producers and ask you guys two more questions. So Vaughn, since you're an individual producer, what challenges do you face around production and marketing?
Oh, well, everybody's main problem, just like my own, would be space. The difference with me, I think, than most gardeners is because I have animals, I have to engineer the land that I do have, which is my backyard, around how my animals operate. So with the goats, they need a certain amount of run, and you know, even if I wanted to grow right now, I like physically could not grow because I only have so much backyard that they can take up. And then the same thing with the chickens. Chickens need a lot of place to scratch, and unless I let them out my backyard or let them go beyond the backyard, they're within the same place that I would grow my food at. So I can't really have food growing where the chickens are because they'll destroy the crop, or I could have bacteria in my crop, which again is a limiting factor because I don't have land. And then the same thing with rabbits, but rabbits, you kind of, the way that you house rabbits is different from the way that you house chickens, and then the way that you house goats. But land would just be the number one thing. And then after land, you know, you go into funding, but funding would basically take care of land, which would then take care of any other problem that I had.
Thank you for sharing that, Vaughn. And similarly, LeTicia, I know you're looking for land that you would like to buy so you can do farming on a larger scale. And as Abbey mentioned, there are like a lot of properties that are unused but are being kept by certain people in power and aren't accessible for farming. So besides that, are there any other large obstacles you're facing?
I would say funding is I mean, really, it takes care of almost everything else. Money doesn't take care of everything, but it sure can help. And so, for an example, I did pursue the purchase of a 10-acre farm here in urban Louisville. And it's the old Gagel Farms. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but 10 acres right smack in the middle of a residential neighborhood, right next to a school, beautiful plot of land. The farm there was gorgeous. They grew a lot of edible crops, but mostly flowers. They were known for their flowers. But at the end of the day, $1.75 million is a lot of money. And that was just to purchase the property. And we're talking about at least $500,000 to get the farm going, right? And make sure that I have some little wiggle room in case something broke down. So, farming on a larger scale would be great. I do want to keep it small but bigger, because I love direct customer service. I love just meeting the people right where they are, and they meet me, right? You come to me, I come to you, whatever it takes, but I'm working directly with families, with the community. So when Miss Pascaline talks about that farm, that land, that space, my dream, and still I think it's possible to happen, but that 10 acres wasn't just for me. I was going to farm an acre of that myself, but then extend that resource to other farmers, because we do have to work together, right, to make this happen. So I would say funding, and then believing. I just need people to believe that we can really do this, and believe in the people that you're supporting. Come check them out. Go to their farms. Go to their homes. See exactly what they're doing, so you're not just making things up in your head about the people, right? So if you are interested in what Vaughn does, hit them up and ask them to come, can I come by and see, and maybe go by a couple of times. Offer to volunteer so you can really see what we're doing. We're not playing. We're serious about what we're doing. And I think if more people really felt that, if you can't feel it now, right, the energy in the place, go by their farms, go by their homes and see what they're doing. And then maybe some things will move. But thank you all again for the time.
Thank you all so much, and I'm sorry we couldn't get to one more question for everybody, but I'd like to turn things back over to Andrew. Do you think you could give us a quick summary of PHIN's efforts to obtain American Rescue Plan funding to support these local urban agricultural efforts?
Andrew, you're on mute there.
Good luck. Okay, sorry about that. So yeah, LeTicia was just talking about money, and we're in a really unique historical moment where city budgets around the country are being supplemented with really large sums of money. And for Louisville alone, it's $388 million that is coming in over the next 2 years. So we're going to live into this idea of abundance thinking, and we are dreaming of this local regional food economy that is just and sustainable, and it works for everybody. So we've been coordinating some community roundtables, meeting with community stakeholders like the folks on this panel, to talk about the needs, to talk about the ambitions and dreams we have for making a really strong community food web. And so, this is we're shooting for $30 million because the kind of jobs that a local food economy and the wealth creation that this kind of work does is so important to our recovery from the pandemic, and it's so important to our future and the folks that are working presently on all these areas. So this is just a rough outline of what we're looking at in terms of how to make use of this funding in a positive way, and looking at things like true community participation through a stakeholder, grassroots-driven food policy council, looking at the economic development side, looking at that food supply and all the infrastructure that folks have been talking about, and then looking at getting that good local healthy food to people through markets that are run by people who have been marginalized and disinvested for so many decades and centuries. So some great initiatives that are already in the works, stores that are open. They need more capacity building, they need more scaling out, replication. And so those are some of the key things that we're looking at in food access. And then the final piece is around education, around the food system, education of our children so that they understand the value and the sacredness of food, as well as those skills that folks need in order to get into the world of food. So skills building around food preparation, around growing food, around processing, around all these things that make up a food system. So yeah, I just wanted to throw that into the mix and maybe kick off some more conversation in the second half hour for those that are able to stay on with us. And folks can also ask questions of the panelists of things that have come up during the first hour. Thanks, Layah.
I had saw a question earlier, and I'm trying to find it in the chat. Lori had asked, are there any incentives for landowners to make their land available for growing?
In Louisville, not at this time in terms of there are some cities that have kind of progressive policies in place that promote things like land sharing programs where individual landowners share space with folks who want access to grow, and there are kind of tax incentives and different things that help promote that. Louisville Metro does not have a program like that. The only thing that, I would say that private property owners that do have space and they want to keep their space open space and undeveloped even after they sell it or after they die, they can place an easement on their property, and that limits development. And that way they know that for generations to come, it will remain either open space or agricultural space. Usually it can be, agriculture is considered permittable. Sorry, those are my dogs. And that provides some tax incentives for private property holders. But again, it really prioritizes folks who already own property. It doesn't do much to help folks that do not own property yet own property and start to build wealth. So that's where I think we need to put a lot of emphasis in our policies moving forward.
And to add to what Abby said, land leasing for agricultural use is a pretty common practice, right? As a private property owner, you can absolutely lease your land, which could dovetail very nicely into what Abby was talking about with conservation easements as well. So, you know, obviously you can give your land away for free, but you can also use it as a private landholder to obtain at least some financial gain for yourself, as well as supporting a farmer.
Abby, I wonder if you could talk about the community land ownership efforts. Maybe LeTicia and you could talk about that work with Stephen Edwards, who wanted to join us today, but with his work schedule couldn't join us.
Yeah, so I think I put into the chat some pretty like universal policy recommendations that I gleaned from literature that has academic literature research that's been done over the past 20 years or so. There's a lot of it on food justice and urban agriculture all ready to be kind of synthesized and put to work. So if you are interested in more resources like that, you can connect with me and I can send you a bunch because I'm reading a lot. But one of the main things that we've talked about almost this whole panel is just community land access to land on which to grow food, and what are some models that create better access for communities. And there are lots of different ideas of how to approach this, and individual land ownership is just one model. It's the model that we in the US are most familiar with and feel most secure in. But there's also community ownership models such as community land trusts that Food and Neighborhoods Community Coalition is researching and working with other groups that are researching it to think about how those might be implemented to help not only folks access land, but to protect the land once it is accessed and used from being developed out from under them. So it's not only about access, it's about asset protection, as Stephen Edwards always says. And so there's also, cooperative models. There are other forms of land trust. There's the central server kind of land trust, which is a little different from community land trust. So lots of things to kind of research and explore and think about in terms of the context of our neighborhoods here in Louisville. But LeTicia, do you want to describe the process we went through with Hope Garden a little bit, or do you want me to do that?
Sure. So the city does have a entity called the Land Bank, and you can purchase vacant properties from them based on what the property is, how big it is. It could be anywhere from $500 a dollar to market value. And so in the case of Hope Garden, which is just an example because there are other people that are going through this right now that are trying to purchase vacant lots that are supposed to be mowed by the city, taken care of by the city, but are mowed by the residents and the people around those lots most of the time, taken care of. They pick up trash. Some of the neighbors have put in new fences on these properties, and they don't have to do that stuff because it's not their responsibility, but they want their neighborhoods to look nice and look great, and the city is supposed to be taking care of this stuff but isn't. So there are a few programs that the Land Bank offers residents if they want to purchase these vacant properties, but there are tons of red tape and hoops that you have to jump through to be able to be eligible for that. And one of the biggest barriers is the city automatically, before we did some reform, some policy changes, assumed that you were going to build a structure. So that's a business or a house or something on the property in order to be eligible to even, be able to purchase that property. And so I think Hope Garden is definitely a success story, but it took a long time. I mean, a year, maybe over a year. for him to get approved to purchase 2 vacant properties next to his property. That he cut the grass and fixed the fence and took care of that area. It's on a corner of a street that nobody cares about, but he had to jump through all these hoops and wait all this time. It took them from February to May, I think, to issue the deed after he was approved to purchase the property. No reason for that at all. It just took time. And so again, it's just, at the end of the day, I just wish the process just wasn't so complex and that we could just do the right things, you know. And specifically for residents in the West End, in Southwest Louisville, if it shouldn't be this hard for them to purchase property to grow food. And there's even questioned about, you know, or was at the time, if he was going to sell, or anybody going to sell the food that they grow from their property, should they be have to get a permit? Should they pay fines because of certain tall grasses and all these other things? It just seems a little much. But without speaking for Stephen and Hope Garden, I hope that kind of paints a picture about some of the fabric of the story. Abby, if you have anything else to add.
I think you covered it. I think that, you know, in a nutshell, the policies and practices that are in place currently in terms of accessing and purchasing vacant lots through the land bank are very much accessible to, you know, folks with money who want to develop businesses or homes. And not that that's always a bad thing, but it's very much unequal access for residents of the neighborhoods that currently live there and spend all their time there, and who are already doing the work of taking care of those communities and producing those communities. And so that's really, I think, the point that we want to focus on, is just that we're not saying that you know, that no development other than community gardening should ever happen. We just think that there needs to be equitable policies that allows it to happen, especially when residents of communities are interested in doing that. Yeah, that's all I'll add.
Layah, why don't we invite anyone that wishes to come off of mute and ask a question or add something to the conversation. Got Mariel, who's doing some great farming over in the Parkland area. Don't want to call anyone out, but yeah, would love for folks to ask any questions or add to the land conversation or any of the topics that we've touched on.
And again, if you guys don't feel comfortable coming on the mic, you can type your questions in the chat and Andrew and I can ask.
Well, since Andrew called me out, I will go ahead and talk. This is Mariel Gardner. I run Fifth Element Farms, also known as Apocalyptic Acres, with Michael George in the Parkland neighborhood. We are two friends since high school who believe that the way to achieve true equity is by removing capitalism, especially from food. So we grow on our vacant lot and we share that food free of charge with our neighbors in Parkland. Last year, we shared over 300 pounds of food with the people who live on that street. And this year, we hope to double that yield and offer 600 pounds to the people who live around our farm.
Beautiful work, yeah. Thank you, Mariel. There's a question from Layah to Bethany. I'll read it. Now, Layah, go ahead.
So this was actually a question we weren't able to ask you during the first part of our session, but Bethany, since you mentioned that infrastructure needs some support production and our urban producers need to be connected to various markets throughout the city, what do you think the biggest needs are and how do you think we can solve these?
So the number one biggest need, right, which we're talking a lot about, is access to secure land in terms of being able to grow a business, to grow enough food or the types of food that you need, right? So that in terms of infrastructure, number one, secure and safe land to grow on. And I have questions for Abbey on that front and other folks if they want in a minute. So that's it, probably first and foremost, right? We have lots of amazing folks who know how to do the work, can do it and grow it and get it out of the way. We also have folks who are in Louisville who are already producing amazing amounts of food on very, very small properties. And so we need to build kind of that aggregation and marketing piece to support what's already here, and also to encourage other folks who are maybe kind of thinking about it on the edge to like find that market space as well. LeTicia just put in the chat, transportation, land, infrastructure. Yes, yes, yes. Right? So our challenges in our supply chain are not in our ability to grow food, but it's to get it from our farm to our market, right? And in like the safest way possible for our food, so that it's stored at the right temperature on that transit, and then while it's being sold. Infrastructure, bigger picture, right? Storage, so safe storage, refrigerators, freezers, both for personal farm businesses as well as for maybe those, you know, whether it's a food bank, a restaurant, you know, could a restaurant with a larger refrigerator buy more local food? Yes, because then they'd have a place to store it for more than a day and they wouldn't be relying on that daily delivery from another thing. So there's a lot of, right, those infrastructure pieces that we could fit into what's already here if we want to look small, or we could dream real big and think about some other stuff. I saw a lot of other people on the panel nodding, so y'all jump in.
I'd just like to add to that quickly, if I could, that, you know, another thing that we also need to be thinking about as we're developing these systems and these policies is to make sure that from the very beginning, that decision-making authority is in the hands of those who are directly affected, those who are doing the work, and those who live in these affected areas. So making sure that we're not kind of just continuing this cycle of kind of the white savior complex, which is, you know, nonprofits thinking we have a really good idea, coming up with these supposed solutions, and then just kind of putting them places. I think that we really, you know, this is an opportunity to rethink how we go about the entire process of community development, and that can look very different from the way that we've been doing it for years. And it doesn't have to look corporate, and it doesn't even necessarily have to look like a nonprofit. I mean, not to say that there is not place for nonprofits, but I think we really need to shift our focus to listening to residents of communities and to growers and to eaters, and to involving that that kind of participatory democracy in every stage of the development of this new food system, because that's the only way it's going to truly be resilient, and it's the only way that it's truly going to be responsive to the needs that exist. And so, yeah, I just wanted to throw, and so that also means looking at like some of the root causes of why there's disparity in access to food, why there's disparity in food security across our city. And so, you know, that means things like looking at affordable housing, like that's deeply related to food security. If you don't own your home, or if you feel that you could, you know, lose your home at any time, like you're not going to invest in a backyard garden. as just one example. So like these things are interrelated, and we need to be thinking as such when we are developing our new policy systems.
There's a question from Al Klein in the chat. If you can grow an abundance of food for those with land, how can it be made available most efficiently to the community? Mike Jackson was on the Learning Lab last week, and he and some others have a great kind of vision for these block-to-block corner stores that have, you know, real essential corner store stuff, but carry fresh produce, you know, just shelves full of great stuff, healthy food that you can walk to, you know, just on every corner. So they're walkable, they're right there in people's community making, so I think a decentralized urban production system and a well-resourced distribution system coming in from surrounding farms could go directly into those decentralized corner stores. But key to that, as folks have mentioned, is that transportation, distribution system, and often cold storage, which is part of the plan that we're putting together for American Rescue Plan funds. But yeah, I just wanted to shout out that great idea of block-to-block corner stores, and then hand over that question to others that would like to respond.
I'm gonna call Vaughn out and say that he's got a great network of food distribution going on. Can you share a little bit more about what that looks like, Vaughn?
Let me ask one question first. When you say food distribution, are you talking about what I'm doing with eggs, or are you speaking about my community of people that I've kind of cultivated and built my communication around?
Both. I was thinking first about the eggs, but also just the network and the community you've built around that too.
Okay. Well, first with eggs, kind of how I started everything was just, you know, I found social networks that, like Facebook, that had communities, and I reached within those communities to find people that shared the same thoughts that I had. So before the pandemic, and I got to go broad before I go narrow, before the pandemic, a lot of people weren't really into as much gardening or owning chickens or any of that type of food access type of stuff. Nobody really cared that much about it because you always had Kroger. You could drive somewhere. Then when the pandemic happened and things started to shut down, as we all are seeing now, a lot of those ideas are opening for everybody. So there was a point in time when I could get chickens at Rural King. Last year, there was a shortage of baby chicks, and then all of a sudden they started having baby chicks everywhere, like Feeder Supply, which is not a place that you would go to buy baby chicks. Knowing that as a chicken raiser, or chicken rearer, or steward of chickens, when I've realized that, I've realized that, all right, the shift is happening where more people care that didn't care. But with that being said, I tapped into the networks of people that are becoming interested in, you know, growing their own food, growing their own things for their salads, raising their own birds, getting their own eggs. As I tapped into those networks, I met people that would basically ask me questions on how I did it, because I traditionally do not come from raising chickens, raising rabbits for meat, raising goats for dairy or meat. That's not where I'm from. I just learned how to do it within, like, you know, a stretch of almost like 8 years. But here lately, it's just been ramped up because of all of the things in the pandemic. And because I just kept getting these questions, I built my network around emails, text messages, and basically social network groups. And within those social network groups, I kind of like just communicated. That's the easiest way to put it. I just communicate with everybody, and I ask questions, people ask questions to me, and if I don't have an answer, I find like a Bethany, a LeTicia, Andrew, Mike Jackson, Steve from Agnes City, Aaron James that left the chat. I mean, I just started talking to people and just kind of put it together. And then the other question that you asked was about egg distribution. In the moment of the pandemic, when stores started closing down and it was hard for people to access food, I knew at that point I had already had chickens and I was moving towards going into a farmer's market, thanks to Mike Jackson from Kentucky Greens. And what started happening again is people would ask, "Hey, do you have any eggs? Do you have this, or how can I get that?" And I just said, "All right, yeah, sure. I'll reach out. I'll do it." And I started driving to people. So it's not that I wasn't in some big idea of having like a business with Kentuckiana Backyard Farms. It was really more education, but it turned into me having to sell eggs to kind of pay for stuff, because I would drive as far as like Prospect to drop off a dozen or 2 dozen eggs to somebody, to then turn back around to go all the way to PRP or Valley Station to drop off eggs with somebody else. And I still do that now. But again, like, my premise wasn't like, oh, I need to make money. No, it's people wanted food. They wanted good food, healthy food. Sure, I'll reach out. And I figure some way, in God's great path, it'll open up a door that'll help me do everything else that I want to do with agriculture, with, having land to raise more, to be able to give back more. I mean, that's really just my idea behind it. Like LeTicia, yeah, you need money, but everything that I've done really just came out of my pocket. I didn't have like a USDA grant. I didn't have somebody saying like, hey, I'll give you this. I mean, like, literally, it's just been, my pandemic money. Instead of going to buy Jordans like somebody else would, I went and built a hoop house. I put up a fence in my backyard to put goats in my backyard to then turn around and say, like, I could milk the goats to help my daughter's skin because she has eczema. Like, those are the things I thought about. So that's pretty much it for me and how I made it happen.
Let us have another question. There's been a lot of great stuff shared in the chat. Yeah, well, Japa's question was around what are the possibilities for connecting people with backyards to urban farmers and gardeners. I think Bethany and Abbey both replied, and they're hoping to connect up. But yeah, any more general thoughts on that? It's an extreme case of many, many, many backyards, right? And maybe folks who, if the idea was there, they'd love to share the food, or grow some food in their backyards. And there's some cities with their own kind of backyard garden development groups. I don't know that we've got that here in Louisville. Looking to you, Bethany. Don't think so.
I just put an example of Toronto. That's the city that I think it's most well developed in that I've come across so far. So if you're interested in that, but yeah, I mean, depending on the location, there are tons and tons of folks on waiting lists to be able to use space in community gardens. I feel certain that some of those folks would be interested in using space, of a private landowner. And that's just one segment of the Louisville population. And there are, other possibilities. I'm sure I see LeTicia nodding her head and Bethany too. So
that's part of my dream. I would love to see more backyards full of food, whether or not the resident that lives there grew it or not. If you have a farmer, if you know of a farmer in your neighborhood, just extend the opportunity. Hey, you can come, our backyard. I hate mowing the grass anyway. So like, our backyard's available. How about I charge you $1 and a pepper, and just let them do it. I have a neighbor that said that I can use his backyard right over the fence, and he was like, just leave this little space for me right here. I want this little space, but you can use the whole backyard if you want. And that's great. And he was like, I'll charge you a tomato. Can I have at least one tomato off of every tomato plant? And I said, yes. So I mean, it can be that simple. It doesn't have to be this big, to do. But I would love for there to be like a citywide effort to connect farmers to backyards. That would be incredible.
And I want to add this. I know I mentioned this in the chat. In July, I'm doing a backyard, almost like garden party. Bring your own bourbon, bring your own bottle, bring your own water, whatever. I'm providing the salads. But on those Saturdays after I'm done with my farmers market, I want to bring people to my grow spaces. So exactly what LeTicia just said, I have 2 grow spaces that I'm growing in that aren't in my backyard, but it's people that have already allowed me to use their spaces to grow. And for people that, like anybody that's here in the crowd, on the panel, if you haven't done something like this, this is an opportunity. Like I said, what I seen in Jamaica, I brought it here. And I'm a real big idea, like I'm an idea person, but I think like being a practitioner means more than anything else. Like you got to do it, and people have to see the work to understand it. So again, on the Saturdays when I'm done with my farmers market, I'm inviting people out, come see a backyard, ask about, why I'm doing the things the way that I'm doing. And, hopefully you find your 5 or your, 4 people that you could share with and do the exact same thing. It's in the chat. I'll put my email address in there again, but if anybody's interested, feel free.
On that same note, right, and Vaughn's going to host, LeTicia hosted one. The Urban Ag Coalition is doing city growers work parties. So this is an open invitation to come open up your site, but invite people into work. Vaughn's having an awesome social event, which sounds fun. I'm signing up. But, right, also we need help in community to support other folks too. We had a great work party last Friday at BearFruit and Grow. I know Mariel's hosting one that's coming up. Vaughn's gonna host one as well. So another great way to go out and look at things, and also support our urban growers by doing stuff for them, right?
Thank you, everyone, for putting a plug in for your organization. And again, before we sign off, if you would like to stay in contact, please take down the emails or include your emails so we can reach back out to you. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. It's about 1:30, so we'll be looking to sign off in the next few moments.
A shout out to Interfaith Paths to Peace and Beloved Community for creating the container and designing a beautiful flyer and hosting the Zoom. Thanks so much, Judd and Cindy over at IPP. Yeah, and thanks to our panelists. This was a great conversation, and really appreciate all the work you do in this city to make it a great city.
Yeah, on behalf of the Beloved community, we got several of our Beloved community members that are on. Just want to say thanks. You guys are just, what a great example of Beloved community that not only includes humans, but the earth. So you all are banging it out so deep out, all of you. Appreciate your wisdom and time, and keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Peace and love, everybody. Copy what's in the chat. Get your information from the chat. Take care.
Thank you all.